il passe super, l'artiste, super, encore un but sensationnel. That's a brilliant bit of follow-up play by Mahe. Oh my goodness me, what a shot.
Sagosen setter det hen! Han setter den! Vi i semifinale igjen!
Hello everyone, welcome to the Uninformed Handball Hour. We're going a little bit off the court and having a little look ahead to the IHF Congress and the election on the 22nd of December for the IHF president. Now, this is interesting news because for the first time since 2009, the IHF president, Hassan Moustafa, has some opponents for the big chair. He's been in charge now for 25 years, since the year 2000. He will have three opponents for the IHF presidency: Gerd Butzeck, Franjo Bobinac and Tjark de Lange, all the European opponents to Hassan Moustafa. And the candidate who appears to be the most outspoken and the leading one in many people's eyes is Gerd Butzeck. Butzeck, who was born in Germany and has been nominated by the German Handball Federation, has had a very storied handball career in pretty much every department. As a player and a coach, he was a Bundesliga referee, an IHF delegate, and even vice president of the Belarusian Handball Federation until 2002, and since 2006 the managing director of Forum Club Handball, which is a collection of professional and amateur clubs from around the world. Gerd was happy to have a chat with us and speak about his platform. You can read more about it on handball-deserves-more.com. We go through a number of his key points and about the state of handball at the moment, the potential for women's handball, seeing as we spoke on the fringes of the World Championship, and what he's learnt while campaigning for this role. And then we'll hear from Ola Selby, who is the editor-in-chief of Handbollskanalen in Sweden, also Go Handball, and we'll speak about his journey into trying to interview all four candidates, speaking to leaders from different federations, and a general deep dive into governance in sport, and particularly around this IHF presidency race. Very interesting chat with Ola. So first we'll hear from Gerd, then moving on to Ola. Hope you enjoyed the two chats. So joining us is Gerd Butzeck, one of the most outspoken and perhaps leading candidate for the IHF presidency. The election coming up next week in Cairo. And Gerd, I have been following a lot of your campaign to date, reading your materials, reading and hearing some of your interviews. But for those who haven't heard from you yet, maybe you can talk to us a little bit about what the motivation is for you taking on this challenge of going into the election next week.
I think handball definitely needs a change of the leadership. The last time Hassan Moustafa had an opponent was in 2009. A couple of times he said that this will be his last election. Honestly speaking, I'm afraid that handball might lose the status as an Olympic sport. I spoke to various presidents from big national federations and asked them to be candidate against Hassan Moustafa, and all of them refused for various reasons. And as nobody was willing to go against him, I was persuaded by a close friend to take the challenge. For some time, I was the only one who announced his candidature. But then last minute, we had two more candidates. So my motivation is that handball remains an Olympic sport. And the key sentence of my campaign is that it is the job of the IHF to grow handball outside Europe. And Europe has to be the motor, the engine of this development. So I think there has not been a really positive development outside Europe during the last 25 years. If you look at the results during the World Championships. So if you have a look which nations participated in the quarterfinals of the World Championship during the last 25 years. You have 2 or 3 nations on the women's side, mainly Korea, Angola, Brazil. And on the men's side, you have Egypt, which was the same in 2000. And then you maybe have Qatar, Brazil, and that's it. So there's no real development. And I want to develop handball worldwide. This is necessary in order to remain an Olympic sport.
And we'll get into that in a little bit, because I know that is the key part of your campaign, the holding on to the Olympic status and the danger that you perceive as well, based on the category that handball is currently in. But now that you've been campaigning for quite a while and quite hard over the last few months, has your perspective changed a little bit on how you're approaching it yourself and also your chances? Because as you said there at the beginning, it was a case of maybe you lobbying to other federations, to other presidents, saying, we need a change, we need somebody else to do this. In the end, it has been you who has taken the charge in this regard. But have you felt in yourself that you've changed your approach in terms of how you speak to the other federations and also how you see your own chances now heading into next week?
The development is really interesting. And my perception, as you said correctly, my perception during the last month has changed. In the beginning, when I announced my candidature, I had the feeling that Africa and Asia will be united against the European candidate, and that Europe will be united in supporting the European candidate. Right now, I have a different opinion. I see that Africa is not united at all. Africa is split into various groups. Asia is a continent which is very supportive for me. I think that in Asia, I might get even more votes than in Europe. This is linked to the fact that I am teaming up with Ali Essaki from Bahrain, who is candidate for the vice presidency, and we are working together closely from the very beginning. He is assuring me support from Asia, but I am working also myself in Asia. And the most interesting, of course, is Europe. In Europe, everybody understands that the change is needed, but unfortunately, there are some presidents from some national federations who have personal interest. They understand that a change is needed, but due to their personal interest, they will go with Hassan Moustafa.
And by personal interest, you mean, cases of getting elected in other positions, whether it be vice presidential or in certain kind of boards. And that is also something which adds a little bit of a twist to it all next week. And I guess it's something that you're also coming to terms with, because it's maybe not as straightforward for some nations to actually accept that they need to put their own interests aside for what you and they may even see as a greater good.
I think Sweden is a good example.
True.
I think that the Swedish president, Fredrik Rapp, fully understands the situation. And a lot of people in Sweden, and I know them very well, like Nicholas Larsen, like Abba Albrechtsson, they understand the overall situation, also Jürgen Holmqvist. But Fredrik Rapp, of course, is in a difficult position, as his wife is candidate to become treasurer, and she will be elected. And I think this to be a good choice. But of course, he is in a difficult position, and I have some understanding for him. But if you speak to people from all across Europe, and if you speak to them about the various topics, then everywhere and every time you feel the desire for change. They tell me the atmosphere is always the same. People understand me, and people are in favor of my candidature. In Europe, they are expressing their opinion openly. If you speak to presidents in Africa or Asia or even America, they are more cautious, telling me, yes, I will elect you. but please don't force me to say it loudly. So
I can also understand why. I mean, anyone who has followed this process in recent years can also understand why that might be the case. Moving on to your key part of this whole campaign, and you mentioned it earlier, the desire, the need for this sport to remain an Olympic sport. I guess one of the few things speaking in favor of Hassan Moustafa is that he has seemingly had a strong relationship with the IOC leadership, but that in an ever-changing sporting world, with the IOC changing, the face of the Olympics evolving as well, likely not to be enough because the sport needs to keep up as well. And you refer to this categorization of the sports, which I think at the moment it's like a classic school grade system between A and F now, and handball is laying down in category D as we currently stand. What do you think are the key quick wins that you can bring handball up in should you take the position as IHF president?
Key quick win is communication. So you need to communicate with the people, and I think there are few people in the world who are communicating right now with Dr. Moustafa. Communication is key, but there are no quick fixes. What we need is growth outside of Europe, and we need not quantitative growth, but qualitative growth. So teams who really are able to get into the top 8 of the world to be competitive at the Olympics. And I made one attempt together with Forum Club Handball. The key question are the TV ratings. Yeah. So you were speaking about the grade system. In the past, it used to be A to E. Now it's E to F, as you said correctly, and handball is in D. But 40% of these ratings are consisting out of TV ratings. So handball is a beautiful sport, which is played in Iceland, in Croatia, and Norway, and Faroe Islands, and Denmark. And all these nations have around 5 million population, or maybe even less. And this means that the TV ratings, looking from the IOC point of view, are very low, even if you have 50% audience in Iceland or Croatia or Norway or even Denmark. So it would be better to have 0.5% audience in China or India or the USA. We made one attempt with Forum Club Handball to improve the level of the US national team. The US national team till 23 never won a match during a world championship. 2017, Forum Club Handball signed an agreement with the International Handball Federation and started supporting US national team players. So every season, 6 players were allocated to European teams. Kristianstad, for example, hosted a US national team player. And the development was tremendous during the last years. In 23, the US national team won 2 matches at the World Championship. And in 25, they won even 3.5 matches. And the half match was a draw against Poland, yeah. Which means that the US national team nowadays is on the level of Poland. And this after, let's say, 7 years, 8 years of work. This is work on the national team level. This is not work on the grassroots level. But I am in contact with Australia, and I think that we need to do something similar with Australia. The US market is the most important market because the IOC is based in the US, and big IOC sponsors like Visa Card or McDonald's are based in the US. And if the CEO of these huge multinational American-based companies do not know a sport, then and the team loses by 20 at the Olympics, then they are of course raising the question: why should I support a sport which nobody is playing in the US, which I do not know, and where the US is losing by 20 goals? So I think this is a logical consequence. So I'm very happy and very proud that the US national team is became a lot stronger during the last years. Therefore, I think we need exchange programs organized by IHF for talented players, talented referees, talented delegates, talented managers and marketing managers. We need exchange, and we will organize that once I'm elected.
On the American side, with this show, as it's one of the few English language podcasts, we have a lot of American listeners, a lot of listeners in the UK, Australia as well, as the classic handball countries. And so it is a recurring question about these teams, and particularly with LA and Brisbane being the next two Olympic Games hosts, that is a massive opportunity, but also incredible challenge for these host nations. And while things are going well on the men's side, for example, with the national team, the women's team is a disaster now, and time is quickly running out for them. But it seems like with the exchange programs, which, as you said, you've been heavily involved with in Forum Club Handball, there's still a key part then for the European nations to be the ones to take them in, because that is the quickest route to handball level success on a technical level or professional level. So do you see it then a little bit twofold? So you need, first of all, the European nations to almost adopt these players into Europe to get them up to speed. But I guess when it comes to developing the sport in those nations outside of Europe, you need to put a lot of trust in those over there, because you can't just, plop some Europeans into Argentina or to Australia and expect it to work. I guess there's also a lot of investment that needs to come in to make it a sustainable thing. And that's something you've spoken about as well, in terms of the IHF's need to spend money as well as a federation, not just be a bank, so to speak.
For the time being, one thing is sure: Europe is the powerhouse of the handball world. I have a very good relation with the president of the European Handball Federation, and he assured me that European handball will develop and will support the growth of handball worldwide. So for the time being, Europe will be the powerhouse and will be the engine of this development of handball outside Europe, and we will have to make use of the expertise and of the experts and of the resources which are existing in Europe. And for sure, we will do this. This has to be supported by the IHF. I think if a young player from Australia or from India is coming to Europe and play handball in Europe for a year or for two, it's even serving more to peace in the world than the same player serving in the army for 1 year or 2 years. Playing handball abroad and cultural exchange is improving the world as a whole. We need scholarship programs financed by IHF to exchange, to bring players, referees, delegates from Europe to the world and from the world to Europe. We need this exchange. We will have this exchange. And this is the key for the growth in the other parts of the world.
As we continue with the connection to Europe and Forum Club Handball, and you have a acute awareness of the challenges as well within European handball for clubs and in particular for players. And once again, recently we've seen a new campaign launched by the various player unions in Europe about their overexertion, is one way to put it. I mean, the campaign a few years ago was straightforward and don't play the players, but now it seems to be a little bit more nuanced in how they're approaching it. How important do you think the IHF has a role in this as well? Because over the years, there seems to be a little bit of headbutting between the International Handball Federation and the European Handball Federation about the calendars with the regularity of world and European championships. And is that something you're also considering as you head into this election?
So when we started Forum Club Handball 20 years ago, it was our demand to reduce the number of championships to one World Championship in 4 years, one European Championship in 4 years, and one Olympic Games in 4 years. This seems to be a logical demand from the club side. If you have a look at Europe, then it seems to be logical to have 2 European championships in 4 years. And if you look at it from the IHF perspective, you have to state that state financing for handball you get only if you prepare for qualification tournaments for world championships. So to raise financial support from governments, we need these world championships, and we need this world championships qualification systems, qualification tournaments, whatever it is. So I have an understanding for the position of all these parts. I also have an understanding for the players who have a workload which is too high. I already discussed with the European Handball Federation to have a joint approach to restructure the calendar long term. This will be for sure not easy. And if you have a look at other sports, for example, basketball, they have almost no break all the year long. And if they have a break, then the players are partly preparing themselves. They are not preparing together with the team. And a situation where, like in handball, the team is preparing 2 months for the season jointly is not imaginable in basketball. They simply don't do it. They have a short break for the players. But I understand, of course, that the players need rest. As far as I know, there is a players' commission inside the IHF, but I think that they have met too often. I am, of course, also in contact with the players' union. The players' union could organize themselves in a better way, I think. I, of course, will communicate with them. I will listen to them. But this is something which will be very difficult to solve and difficult to improve. It is important that the players have a certain fixed rest period, vacation during the year, and this must be granted, and this can be granted via the international calendar.
Yeah. I have a feeling that, a lot of this discussion is always very, not this particular one, but the discussion around the conflict in schedules is very Eurocentric, which is natural enough because Europe is such a powerhouse. But seeing some of your other points that you've made in the build up to this, also about the need for major tournaments to be outside of Europe, that we don't strictly need to have a 20,000 seat arena for every world championship. We can play in a full 3,000 seat arena. That there is a lot of looking outwards, which I think feels like a smart way to go. It doesn't need to be so Eurocentric in terms of world championships, but also perhaps in terms of calendars, because if you look at the nations that are, struggling to get into those top tiers and to get into world championships, they have one opportunity every 2 years to do so, basically. And that, there's regional opportunities, but the chances for a mid-tier South American side to take on Asian teams happens basically in the President's Cup every 2 years. Is there something to be said in this regard that we can create a lot more world handball without Europe as well, and then to work in those qualification paths, to work in those international development without having to worry about what the best players in the best clubs are doing?
Yeah, I think this is a good point and is an important point. Again, there are needs from two sides. Of course, we would like to play more tournaments outside Europe. It would be great to play a world championship in Tokyo, in Brazil, in Rio, or in Cairo, as we did in the past. I think these are the three first option. If you want to play outside Europe, maybe again also Korea. The IHF during the last 25 years did not really succeed to enable a non-European nation to host a world championship in a way that there will be spectators even if the home team is not playing. This is a fact. This is something which needs to be improved and which is something on which we need to work. It might be a way to support the nations outside Europe by interfering in the qualification process to give them more possibilities to play. They have obviously a lack of matches, and playing always in Europe every World Championship or most of the World Championship is also a financial factor. So I spoke to the president of one of the participating nations now a few days ago, and he told me that every one of the girls is paying $4,000 to participate in the World Championship, and $4,000 is quite a big amount of money for a 20 or 25-year-old girl or lady, whatever you want to say. But it's a huge amount of money, and of course, it's difficult if you have to come from South America or from Angola to Europe to play a world championship. Youth championships and beach championships are partly played outside Europe, which is okay. But we have to think about a system where we can save some money on traveling costs, because we have extremely high travel costs for all the participating nations.
Mentioned on the women's side, you've been in and around the championship taking place at the moment in Germany and Netherlands, which is coming to an end as we're speaking here later this week. On this show, we're always so excited about the non-European sides and their development. It was great to see Brazil get to the quarterfinals again, and those maybe pot three nations getting closer to the pot two nations, but also kind of underlying topic we've been speaking about during the last couple of weeks is about the women's sport as a whole, because it is having a very strong moment. Women's sport, we're seeing it in football and even in sports that aren't necessarily worldwide, like rugby, for example, which is had a fantastic world championship, and it's starting to hit nations even such as Germany, where it's not a developed or it's not an established sport. Do you feel that handball is maybe missing the boat a little bit in that regard, in terms of the uprising of women's handball? And in that sense, do you feel that is also a priority?
Women handball has a huge potential. And from my perception, handball is the best sport for women. As a team sport, it's better than football, it's better than volleyball, and it's better than basketball, and even better than rugby. Maybe you have another opinion, but
no, I fully agree with you. Yeah.
I think that is this is the highest potential, and this is also the highest potential on the sponsoring market, because the big multinational companies who are investing heavily in soccer, they will be forced in the future to split their investments into two parts, into the male part and into the female part. And there will be a huge increase on the female side in the future. Brazil was a bit unlucky in the match against Germany. At the end, 10 minutes to the end, they were down only 3 goals, so they had the chance to come even closer and to change the outcome of the match. Unfortunately, again, we have only one non-European team in the quarterfinals. My target in my program for 2035 is to have at least 4 non-European teams in the quarterfinal. Angola is on the rise. I spoke to the president, but I also spoke to Iran. They have pretty good conditions in Iran to improve, but they need support. They are asking for support. And if I'm speaking to other national federations, they are not asking for money. They are asking for coaches, for referee education, and for stuff like that, which is the core job of the International Handball Federation to do. Women is the high potential, I would say, for IHF, and unfortunately, IHF is not putting enough emphasis on the women's side. So there is no women Super Globe. My vision would be to play a women's Super Globe in a few years, let's say. At least in 2035, in a crowded Madison Square Garden in New York, in front of 20,000 spectators in the US. This is a nice vision, and this is a nice picture. This is something which would mean that we conquered the US market. Yesterday, I had conversation with some managers from India, and I am in contact with China. We need to succeed where the world is watching. And Asia is the home to billions of people, to the biggest markets in the world. And we need to succeed where the world is watching. This is important for the International Olympic Committee, and this is important for our sport.
Yeah, I mean, India, I think, is always a great example. You consider its team sports in field hockey and cricket. If you throw cricket and some kabaddi in there, you basically have handball players ready to go. So it's, something that definitely agree with the potential in that regard for these nations. You've been very good with your time. I just want to ask you, should you get into office, how, from what you've understood in discussions and being a part of this world for so long, how quickly do you think you are able to implement changes as an IHF president? Because the impression we always get outside is that everything is decided by Hassan at the IHF, and kind of nothing happens or doesn't happen without his say. Should you get into that chair, how quickly do you think you're able to actually start implementing things and shift the course as you'd like to see it?
Commissions must restart meeting again. Commissions must restart working again. People must get responsibilities. And you said that everything is decided by Hassan Moustafa. I would extend and say everything is decided by Hassan Moustafa, but more precisely by the general director of the International Handball Federation. The World Basketball Federation, FIBA, has 200 people working in Switzerland. The International Handball Federation has 20 people working in Switzerland, like 20 years ago. And this is not progress, this is stagnation. And this is something we are facing. We have to increase dramatically the number of people working in the IHF. I mean, you know better than me the media department of the International Handball Federation.
I know.
But you understand the point.
I know the person specifically.
Yeah.
The one,
Okay,
the one person.
The one person. He is doing a great job, but he is one person.
Yeah.
In EHF, you have 10 people doing the same job. So the IHF has 20 employees. The European Handball Federation has 125. The French Federation has 80. The German has 85. So somehow the relation is not correct. So there need to be a lot of more people, and these people need to get responsibilities. This is something. This is the first thing I'm going to change. People will get responsibilities, and people will be able to answer questions. So today I'm facing the situation that people are sending emails to IHF and they don't get answers. They simply don't get. They don't get even an answer. They don't get a reaction at all. And this is obvious if you have only 20 people working in the office of a World Federation. So this will be, I think, the first change. And as you said earlier, Hassan did something very well. The IHF has strong financial reserves, but what I need to do is I need to invest these reserves into handball. The IHF is not a bank. It's a sports organization where the earnings have to be invested into the sports. And I think it's possible to invest more than 30%, even 40 or 50% of the profits of world championships directly into the national federations worldwide.
Been fascinating to discuss all of these things with you, Gerd. Best of luck for the rest of the campaign and for the election itself. We'll all be watching very keenly. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to speak to you, and I wish you all the best, and just keep going and supporting handball.
Joining us in the podcast once again, Ola Selby from Handball's Kanalen. Now the big dog, the man running the show at Handball's Kanalen as well, which is great to see the work you're doing so far, Ola, both on Handball's Kanalen and on the English site Go Handball. Great to have you on the podcast again.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be back. I mean, it's been a while. I think the last time I was on when was you. I think it was when you and I shared a hotel room in Lille during the Olympics.
Yes,
so it's been a while. So good to be back.
Yeah. The focus of our chat today is on the upcoming IHF Presidency election, which is going to be taking place on the 22nd of December. So after the World Championship, the focus shifts to a little bit of the more political side. You and your gang have been working very hard on that in the build-up. You've been releasing a bunch of articles throughout the autumn, but now particularly in the last couple of weeks, as you've been speaking to various people about this election and looking at some of the intricacies of it as well. So first of all, what's been the motivation? What's been the driving factor for you in putting together all of these articles in the first place?
First of all, it is the most interesting IHF election in quite some time, considering that Hassan Moustafa now there's 3 challengers. And I mean, the previous 2 elections, he's been the only one going for it, so to say. So that's one of the reasons. And I think a lot of people are interested in what's going on behind the scenes, how the IHF is working, and how like you say, all the intricacies ahead of the election. So that's the main reason for doing it. I mean, I think people want to read about these and listen to these sort of stuff when the election is closing in.
Yeah, and for those who haven't been catching up on it yet or are just going to be diving in with us, maybe you can give us a quick intro into the state of affairs, with Hassan Moustafa as the incumbent who has been in the job for quite a while, and the 3 contenders to go against him, to oppose him at this election.
If I were to start, I mean, the three candidates going against Hassan, I mean, they are all quite capable. They all have a lot of experience. I would say that Gerd Butzeck is, in my opinion, the strongest candidate, considering how much work he has done beforehand, and he has a huge network of people. He knows basically everyone in the handball world. So he's a very interesting candidate in that sort of way. I mean, and we can go more into detail later, but I would say that all of them would do a great job if they were selected. The thing for me is that a change is needed at the IHF after 25 years with the same president. All of the governance experts I spoke to doing the research work for these articles, all of them said the same thing, and it is. I mean, after that long time of one guy running it all, you need change.
Yeah.
And it's been 25 years with Hassan Moustafa, and he has done good things as well, but change is needed. And I think, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter if it's Butzeck, Bobinac, or de Lange, as long as there's change, basically.
3 people going up against Hassan, all European based. Butzeck is quite a journey, but began in Germany, was heavily involved in Belarusian handball for quite a while, and in the Forum Club handball. Tjark de Lange from the Netherlands, who has been very much involved in Dutch handball the last decade or so, and Franjo Bobinac, the Slovenian, who has also been involved in, it seems, every level in Olympic committees in Slovenia, club handball, but also associated with Gorenja, who we all know is a massive supporter of handball, so involved in that side. 3 strong candidates, as you said. How do you feel about the 3 candidates that are going up against Hassan Moustafa, but also going up against each other in a way, all coming from Europe, the strong land of handball in terms of pure, ability and marketing and numbers of players, but not numbers in nations, because as you have also delved into, every single nation has 1 vote in this. And is there something to be said that they are maybe kind of eating at each other here in terms of the potential for one of them to win this election?
I mean, it could be, because I mean, a big challenge if we're looking purely at Europe, a big challenge is that Europe is never unified. And I mean, France has already gone out in an interview with us at Go Handball and said, I mean, Philippe Bernard just said it outright that they will vote for Hassan. And even if Europe were to unite and everyone voting for the same candidate, that wouldn't be enough, because that's only, 52 votes out of over 200. That's a problem. But I mean, I've heard that the candidates might cooperate tactically. Let's say that one of the candidates has less votes than he needs, then perhaps that candidate will give, so to say, his votes to one of the other candidates that are looking a lot more promising to be elected. But I mean, that's not confirmed information, but that's what I've heard from different people. So but I mean, that kind of political choreography is probably very real and normal in the IHF election process. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from what I can remember from being at a couple of congresses for the IHF, where things have always been, in that sense, quite transparent, but you can see that there are the groups of people, certain blocks of countries meeting together the night before. They're having their discussions and deciding which way they're going to vote. So I can imagine it will be moving and shaking until the very last second, where, one of them, for example, Tjark de Lange, the Dutch candidate, he said in his interview to you that he is doing it more as a statement than anything else, that he doesn't see himself getting maybe more than 5% at best, but he's doing it to show that he and the Dutch Federation feel there is time for change. From a European point of view, at least when it comes to the media, there's always that one-sidedness of, yes, we need change, like this is ridiculous that it's going on for so long. And some of the most outspoken media are in Germany and the Nordic countries, because that is where there is the most handball coverage. But this is where then it gets a little bit more interesting and not so straightforward, because it seems that everyone is speaking in one view towards this. And Germany have, they've publicly backed Gerd Butzeck as their representative in this. The French, as you said, are going to go for Hassan again, because Bernard is running for vice president, right?
Yeah.
And then when it comes to the Nordic countries, even though it might seem the most obvious at all, it's not quite that straightforward. Denmark and Norway were so outspoken about it in the media and in some public figures. However, Denmark have a major player at the IHF who I assume wants to be re-elected in Per Bertelsen. Norway have spoken to you and said, we don't know yet. Basically, Randi Gustad, who's relatively new as the leader of the Norwegian Federation, they have the head of the referees. And on the Swedish side, Fredrik Rapp has, has kind of got his hands tied a little bit, because his wife is going up for re-election in the Treasurer Department. So with all of this, it makes it a lot more complicated.
Yeah.
Connected to that, what I'm really surprised by is that Bana said to you that he hadn't discussed it within the Federation. So he's just one man who's happy to have his job, and he's going to decide that it's Hassan Moustafa who will remain as president, regardless of what the rest of the Federation thinks. Some things to delve into there in governance in individual countries as well.
It's like you say with the Nordic countries. I mean, if we start there, all of these countries are very at least they want to look like they're very high on morale, ethics, all of that sort of stuff. But I mean, Sweden, when I spoke to Fredrik Upp, the president of the Swedish Federation, he didn't want to speak about which candidate Sweden are voting for, because I mean, it's also political. There, in my opinion, people are afraid of what might happen if I mean, let's say Sweden, Denmark, and Norway would publicly endorse Butzeck or Bobinac. Then if someone else gets elected, Hassan perhaps, then they fear what will happen to those people in. And I mean, there are more at least 22 nations have candidates for key IHF positions. So that's yeah, that says it all.
Yeah, and it's quite bizarre that this is even a discussion, that, you know, the fact that people have people running in other departments of the federation and other committees, that they're so closely linked to the head of each federation, and that can be a punishment for some kind of transparency in all of this, which I think speaks a lot about the problems that surround it. And in some cases, it's national federations who have done this to themselves as well. If the same person who wants to be a vice president is also the person who's making the decision for president.
Yeah, why do this to themselves? But yeah, people want power, I guess.
Is there anything in these discussions, like with the various federations, that particularly surprised you about it? Because I guess these are all kind of things you were aware of already. But is there anything in particular that, in the way people spoke about it, maybe in some cases a little bit more open than you anticipated, or was it all pretty much as you expected?
The most of it was like I expected. I mean, one thing that was unexpected was the thing you mentioned with France and Philippe Panat, that he basically said that he will make the decision without speaking to anyone else. But I mean, otherwise, other people I've spoken to say that France very much agreed with other candidates than Hassan, their programs and their plans for the future. But I mean, it doesn't matter. They will vote for Moustafa anyways. But otherwise, not that much surprising things. I mean, I'm not that surprised that federations are afraid to speak out on who they're voting for. I tried to push Sweden to speak out, but that was a no-go. Randi Gustav was a bit more open, I believe, than Fredrik Upp, and I believe her. I mean, if she said that they don't know yet who they're voting for, and I believe her. And she also said that she will be willing to say it publicly after the election. So that's at least something.
Yeah, and something in favor of the Norwegian Federation is that they have also historically been the federation that always release the IHF minutes as well.
Yeah.
You know, any IHF minutes that you find on the internet, usually it's Handball Nordia's website and a connection to that. So, and I think Randi has to be taken on her word in that regard.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, one of the other things you pointed out, which is always a little bit of a sticking point from media about the IHF, is a number of member nations. And you did a real deep dive into the 211 member nations and how many of them actually exist or not.
Yeah, let's cut to the chase. The IHF, on paper at least, looks huge. 211 members, the same head count as FIFA. But when we start peeling back layers, the paper looks a little thin. It's a federation with impressive reach on spreadsheets at least, but there are troubling gaps in practice. I mean, over 100 of the member nations are either absent from world rankings, or they don't even have a visible digital footprint. I mean, can we even speak about the IHF being global when about half of the nations don't even have a website, no social media. You can't get a hold of them. I sent an email to all of the 211 member nations ahead of the elections. 3 of them agreed to an interview, and I think 10 or 11 of them answered my email, and I sent several reminders as well. So that's, I'm not saying that the most important thing for these federations and the people that are working there are answering emails from journalists. But I mean, if there is no one there taking care of that type of business, is there even anyone working or enough people working there? So that's very problematic.
And as part of that, you also looked at the digital footprint, over half of them not having any kind of functioning website or social media or visibility in terms of, yes, handball is played here. And this is crucially important because come the 22nd of December, I would be surprised if the vast majority of these 211 nations do not have a vote in the election, and that there is somebody there or somebody representing them in whatever way. I'm not sure if there is an online option for these votes. I don't know how much you know about that, but I guess a lot of people will happily take their trip and accommodation in Egypt to be there. So I don't know if the Handball's Canal budget affords you to take a trip there, and you might actually get to meet someone from all of these countries you've been trying to reach out to. But that is the important thing, because all of these countries have the same voting rights, and there has been a huge jump in recent years about those numbers. And so the question is, naturally, are they actual legitimate votes, or are they quite simply somebody there who will vote so that there's some kind of perk being the president of Equatorial Guinea's Handball Federation?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that Germany's vote should mean more than one of these smaller handball nations, but it definitely causes governance issues when nations who basically have no handball activities at all, their vote means exactly as much as the vote from Germany or France or Egypt or whatever nation you want to. So that's problematic. And I mean, it's, according to some sources I've spoken to, it's almost impossible for a nation to be not allowed to vote. It's almost impossible. They have some criteria, the IHF do, but I mean, it takes a lot to not be able to vote. So my guess is that, what was it? Around 200 of the 211 nations will be allowed to vote during the election. So, and I mean, I think all of us know that not all of those 200 nations have a lot of handball activity or a lot of help from the IHF, from that matter. So,
one other article that is coming out as we speak tomorrow morning about one of those governance experts you spoke to. And the headline you sent me here is that you're not looking at democratic governance, you're looking at political engineering. Is that kind of the focus of where that point is coming from, or can you tell us a little bit more? Because the article will be available for people to read once the podcast is out.
Yeah, I spoke to Chris Rasmussen, who's a Danish integrity and governance expert, and in the article, he basically dissects the structural flaws that shape power inside the IHF. You'll have to read it, but he knows what he's speaking about, and the fact that it's looking like it does at the IHF and has, I mean, it's been the same for a long time now, we all know. He finds it very troubling and alarming, like almost everyone else you speak to does. So not a very good climate for governance or for anything at all, basically.
I'll ask you in just a sec about the chats you had with all three candidates who are opposing Hassan Moustafa in this vote. You had interviews with all of them. They all provided their plans or their hopes for what they would bring. And I'll ask you to compare and contrast it in a little bit. But first, you also, in the spirit of fairness and all of this, you also did try to speak to Hassan Moustafa and give everyone a fair conversation in this. How did that go?
Well, like you can imagine, it did not go well. I think the first email I sent was back in September. I'm not completely sure. It might have been the start of October, but I believe it was at the end of September. And since then, I've tried to get a hold of him through the IHF. And I mean, like every other journalist working in handball knows, it is as close to impossible as it could be. But the IHF refuse phone or face-to-face interviews with him. And they are insisting that someone inside the IHF interview him, and then they send me written answers afterwards. So, but that hasn't happened yet. So I still haven't received anything. I followed up repeatedly, and people there are not very happy with me at the moment. But I'm fine with that. While the other candidates speak openly in media, the sitting president remains completely silent. In my eyes, that's not a good look. But on the other hand, it's not surprising for anyone, I think, that he's not doing any interviews at all.
Has there been any kind of mission statement or agenda that has been laid out by Hassan about, being re-elected? Anything he wants to change, anything he wants to do, or is it, keeping up the good work as always? Or is there anything that's been provided to you in lieu of an actual interview?
I have not received anything at all, though I heard from Randi Gusta, the Norwegian president, that she had a look at Hassan's program, and she said that most of it is quite similar to the other candidates. So, and I don't know what to make of that, but at least the federations that are voting get to see his program and what the plans are. But I mean, the only thing I keep hearing is from the IHF is that we will try to get you the interview or the answers to your questions, but then nothing.
On the programs then, from all of the candidates, as you said, the one provided by Hassan to the federations then seems to be quite similar. Can you do a little bit of a compare and contrast? What are the key things that these candidates are looking at, wanting to change in the next term of the IHF presidency? What are they worried about? Where do they think there is some ground to be gained?
Well, first of all, the thing that all of the candidates agree on is that Butzeck and Bobinac spoke more about it than de Lange did, but they spoke very much about the Olympic status of handball. And both of them or all of them are worried about the future of handball in the Olympic movement. So that's the biggest thing for me, at least, when speaking to them, because like we all know, it's in handball. The Olympics is in LA in 2028, and then it's in Brisbane in 2032, and it's not exactly handball meccas. So the candidates are worried about that part, and then they are speaking about, and that's where I believe that Franjo Bobinac becomes, how should I phrase it? He becomes very interesting because of his IOC connections and his history as a leader, and he knows a lot of people in the IOC, and he knows a lot of people in all of the Olympic movement. So that seems like a good way for handball to stay relevant. Besides that, I mean, they speak about basically the same things. They want more transparency within the IHF. They want to modernize the organization. Butzeck spoke a lot about that the IHF is at the moment more like a bank. He said that Hassan's been very good at earning money for the IHF. He's not been spending that much money. And Butzeck said that if he were to be elected, he would spend money, not just use it as a bank. But I mean, otherwise, Butzeck he's the candidate who's been the most openly critical of Hassan. He was a bit more diplomatic when I spoke to him and tried to pressure him about Hassan. But he said in the past that with someone like Hassan at the top, we shouldn't be surprised that people talk about corruption and bribery in handball. And that's quite the statement. So, and he has enormous experience, like, I mean, he's done it all in handball. And another interesting thing about him is that he spent years trying to convince people in France, in Denmark, in Sweden, in Germany to run for IHF president. And when no one took the job, he basically said, "Oh, fine, I'll do it." Yeah, he's interested in that way. Then he has his whole thing about a third handball discipline, play at a basketball courts and that sort of stuff. Like, I think you know more about that as well, Chris.
Yeah, in terms of trying to spread, I guess, the sport outside of Europe and places where there's no classic handball courts. I mean, there's something that the EHF have done with street handball to an extent, but that I think has been very much focused on a fun, participatory, maybe more kids orientated thing, which again is not so bad. But from what you're saying there, I guess there has to be a fair amount of credit given to Gerd Butzeck then, because he was the first one to step up, and with the others coming so late. Not to accuse anyone of copying homework, but like if everyone ends up with kind of the same program and agenda for what they want to do, and Butzeck has had that out for a long time, then maybe it makes it a little bit easier. The Olympic side of things is quite interesting. As you said, Bobinac has great connections there. That's probably one of the things that I think Hassan Moustafa has maybe gotten credit for, because he's had a strong connection with Thomas Bach in the past and tried to push the sport. In some areas, it looks like handball is is trailing. He's spoken about the rating between A and F. That handball is currently in D level, so towards the lower end. We were in Paris and Lille last year. It looked to be in a good place. It is a staple of the program, an ever-changing program, of course, which I guess where there's a little bit of the fear.
Yeah.
But again, when the sport has gone to the non-traditional markets, I believe last time the Olympics was in Sydney in 2000, it was voted as the most exciting sport by the Australians. So in London, it was the same. People loved it. People do seem to connect to it every 4 years, but I understand the willingness or the feel that we need to get out of Europe and spread the sport at a higher level is a crucial thing, and something, again, we're seeing at this at the World Championship that's happening right now, where there's one or two exceptions, but overall it seems like the gap is not getting tighter.
Yeah, and some of the candidates, perhaps all of them, spoke about it. But the fact that, and I live in Sweden. I'm from Sweden, so some of them speak about the fact that it would mean a lot more for handball's Olympic sport if we're speaking about TV figures. That if one city in China would completely tune into the handball tournament, instead of, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Iceland, all of it, Slovenia, you can go all the way to the Balkans. It would mean more for handball in that for the Olympic status. And I don't know and I don't know what's right or wrong, but that's at least what people are saying. And then with the Olympic risk, or how you want to phrase it, it all depends on who you're speaking to. Yeah. Because I know the people within the IHF, at least publicly, they say that no, it's no problem at all. Handball is fine. And some other people you speak to, like the candidates opposing Hassan, they are all a bit afraid of what might happen in the future. So, you don't know what to believe sometimes.
With everything you've learned in this this series of interviews and all of the research you've done, all the people you've spoken to, with the understanding you've gained as well of this process, if you were to make some kind of prediction for how it's going to go, how do you see it panning out?
Well, if you're asking me about the most likely outcome of the election, my answer is that Hassan Moustafa will win. But I believe that the other candidates have a chance of winning. It's not done and it's not sealed. I believe that the candidate with the biggest opportunity to win besides Hassan is Gerd Butzeck. Because, like you said, he was the first one stepping up. He's traveled to every corner of the world, speaking to different federations. Not saying that the other candidates hasn't, but I still would say that Hassan has around 60% chance of winning, and the other guys are around 40. That's my prediction. But for anyone to beat Hassan, like I said before, first of all, Europe must unite, and historically that never happens. And even if Europe does unite, that's only 52 votes of about 200. I've heard that Europe, or at least some European countries, have a meeting the day before the Congress starts to coordinate. But before that, no one would speak publicly. But like as well, Africa and Asia are much larger voting blocks, and Moustafa has always been strong there, and he will probably be strong there now again, and also in those smaller nations that I don't want to say no one's heard of, but no one's heard of them in a handball context, at least. So Hassan probably will win, but it's still more exciting. It's a more exciting election than it's been for a very, very long time. So that's something, at least.
That's all we can ask for now.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, then, it would be rude not to ask, as we're coming to the end of the World Championship, what the hell happened to Sweden?
Don't get me started.
What I will tell you, though, because you asked me just before we get into it.
Yeah.
Because you asked me for some takes, some opinions. I believe I was the only one to say Sweden would be in trouble.
Yep, it was. I forgot to text you about that. Yeah. Probably should have complimented you on that, but yeah.
Fine. I'll just take this chance, to.
Yeah. I don't know. It feels like, first of all, it doesn't seem like the team is in sync at all between the coaching staff and the players, and the players between the other players. Basically, it's still. Yamina Roberts has to be the best player every match in order for Sweden to win games. And I don't think it should be that way. She's 35 years old and she's carried this team for a long time. and Hagman and Bunsen and Blum and all of those players. I mean, someone else from the younger generation has to step up, and they don't.
Yeah. There was about 20 minutes where it all looked perfect. Those first 20 minutes of the Brazil game, I think it was the first time in years that every single key Swedish player was on the court together with Anna Lagerqvist. She went down injured. Yeah, it was like a house of cards, right? All of a sudden, it all went downhill from there. What do you think the overall reaction has been? Like, there's a lot of, when I'm reading in a lot of other Scandinavian media, a little bit enjoying how much anger there is in Sweden about all of this. Does seem to be a lot of outrage. Do you think there's going to be some major change or inquiry into what has happened here?
I think there should be a major inquiry, definitely. I mean, this whole discussion around Thomas Axner working with the SBI and the national team, it's been around for a while. And I mean, we have the same thing on the men's side with Mikael Apelgren. So personally, I often get tired and frustrated about discussions that, we should fire that coach and so on, because if you don't have an alternative or a better alternative, why fire him? I still think that he's the right man for the job, but I think it's worth thinking about if it's too much with SBI and with the national team.
Yeah, is he not being paid enough?
Perhaps
by Sweden.
Perhaps, but I think a bigger question is this the perfect time for a generational shift? Because Sweden probably won't play in the Olympics 2028 anyways if it continues like this. I mean, it's been downhill after the Olympics, so something needs to be done. Why not change some players, get to look for the future? I think that then I'm not saying we should change 16 players or 18 players, but something has to be done. But then again, another concerning part about Swedish women's handball is that the younger generations aren't looking that good right now. At least things can happen, of course, but I mean the junior national teams and below are not performing very well. I think the eldest youth national team finished 13th 2 years in a row, and that's basically the same position as the women's national team will end up here. So we'll see what happens, but it's definitely not good. And I mean, it's never fun when Danish and Norwegian people are happy about our misfortunes. So
we get a chance for some revenge already with the men's team in January, I'm sure.
Yeah, hopefully we'll do better then, at least.
All right, Ola, thank you so much for that. And well, I will see you, and I'll be in your backyard in January for the Euro in Malmö.
Yeah, welcome to Malmö.
Thanks, mate.
See you.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.
Well, thank you to Ola, and before that, Gerd. Very interesting discussions with both of them about the upcoming IHF Presidency race. The election itself taking place on the 22nd of December, so definitely keep an eye out for that. And as Ola and I spoke about, have a look on gohandball.com for the series of articles and his deep dive into this election. We'll all keep an eye out for how it progresses in the coming days. I hope you enjoyed this little bit of a different look at the handball world after our World Championship coverage. We'll continue with the podcast in the coming days and weeks as we keep you entertained over the Christmas break and then build up to the IHF Euro in January. Until the next one, everyone, take care and goodbye.